Right, first of all, before anything else, I am sorry about the ridiculously clickbaity thumbnail. I'm just quite curious to see if those red arrows really do make a difference. And secondly, welcome back to the newly branded up Point and Click Devlog, an ongoing series in which we're never quite sure if Dwayne Henderson does actually work for the CIA or not. Today I'm going to talk about killing your darlings, or in other words, destroying something you've made in order to make something better. So I mentioned in my last video that I was thinking of redoing the first backdrop that I drew. That's the reception or lobby for the building that the whole game takes place in. It's the second room you'll see as the player, and it irked me a bit that as I progressed through my list of backdrops, my drawing style had changed and gotten a bit more refined than when I started, so that things like this didn't quite mesh with things like this. I think that may be true of all the rooms to a point, but the reception one really stood out to me, so I decided to kill it and start again. It can feel frustrating to do something like this, like nobody likes to feel as though they're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back on anything, but if you can try and be reasonably objective on things, that whole idea of being able to kill your darlings is a useful skill to have. I just recently did a pitch at work where we were coming unstuck for ages in the lead up because something about it wasn't quite right. I personally just wanted to push on for the sake of time, but it was only when we accepted that the main crux of our proposal was coming from a slightly flawed slogan that we were able to rethink, redo and come out with something that was overall much better. And that thinking is probably what influenced my decision here, so sorry old maroon coloured reception, it is time to throw you in the bin. So one of the main differences with drawing the replacement was that I started this one with a much bigger floor plan. Originally every room in the whole game was going to have this very simple shape, but as I progressed I've enjoyed adding a bit of variety to that, so I figure having this room be different to the few that follow can't hurt. Broadly, the new room has basically the same elements as the old one, save for a printer, which I forgot to make room for in my original drawing. But that meant I could save some time overall by reusing assets I drew in the original. So the big tree, the sofa, the door on the left, etc. are all assets that I was okay to keep. After drawing in Pixarkey, it was just the usual job of adding my lighting in Affinity Photo, which is a process I detailed back in episode 6. I should mention as well, for those that care, that there is some method in the madness of changing the wall colour here. As the player progresses up the building, they will visit different departments in the office, and each department has its own colour scheme to help you remember that, oh, the R&D department was the blue one, for instance. When I drew the IT department rooms, I ended up picking a colour at random that was very close to the one in this original reception room, so I thought it would be helpful to steer away from that and give it a more neutral colour. Anyway, this is what we ended up with. It's not a Monet, but it's better than it was, so I think this was a worthwhile diversion on the whole. I also spent a bit of time the other day tarting up my Trello board, which I'd basically neglected since I so proudly set it up back in episode 1. By the way, it pains me how episode 1 is by far the most viewed on this channel, but has awful sound quality and no script, so I was just rambling. I wish you could just replace videos with new files and keep the views. Sigh. Anyway, I've now added new columns for the various parts of the backdrop process that I mentioned in the last video, so I can work through these lists, then delete them and just bang backdrops into the done list eventually. From there I will move on to my main character, and I have my animation requirements listed here. When we get here, I think I'll do a similar thing with multiple lists along the way to that done pile. This board having a bit more order to it is helping me feel okay about the scale of the task as well. It's just a case of focusing on the right now and the very next. Worrying about what's beyond that isn't really going to help anyone. Also, now I'm a bit more set up, I've been thinking about timings and trying to meet my self-imposed deadlines of having all the backdrops finished this year. I've got about 12 to do as first drafts, hopefully less by the time this goes out, but if I can get all of those done by the end of October, so that's the next couple of months, I can spend November and December getting them into more or less final shape, and then we'll still be on track to push into what I'm thinking of as year 2 next year. All of which is a pretty long-winded way of saying that not much has changed, so I appreciate you sticking with me while I continue on through this somewhat repetitive part of the process. The other day I saw someone on Reddit post about their upcoming game, the Trouble Hunter Chronicles, which you can actually see being worked on here, and they said, "I didn't fully appreciate how much work goes into making the backgrounds for a point and click game until I made my own. From the many different perspectives to the sheer amount I would need, it has been perhaps the hardest thing about this project." And that's basically been my main learning too. Point and click games have a shit ton of backdrops, and getting them all done takes a long time, but then getting them all done is such a huge part of the workload nailed, so I'm excited to have this list squared away eventually. There's a link to the Trouble Hunter Chronicles on Steam in the description if you want to check that out, which reminds me I should probably think about making a Steam wishlist page at some point. Like, how early is too early for that? It kind of feels a bit premature given that all I have right now are some backgrounds. Let me know if you have any experience with that in the comments, I'd be keen to hear. I've no doubt the process of setting up a Steam store page would make for a useful devlog episode when we get there, either way. Anyway, that's probably enough rambling for today, I think. I hope nobody was thrown off by the new channel name and icon, nor that YouTuber cringy thumbnail. It's not going to be long until I start using thumbnails where I've just got my head in my hands and the title is just, "I made a mistake" or something. All glory to the YouTube algorithm. Once again, we do have a Discord server for the channel with a growing number of point and click creators discussing their progress and sharing artwork, etc. So, feel free to join us. There is a link in the description. If not, no worries. Hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye.